What is up, Wizards fans? Welcome into another Believe in Wizards podcast. I'm Matt Modderno. I'm pleased to be joined here today by Keenan Womack. The Wizards just took Tre Johnson with the number 6 overall pick, had him number 3 on my own individual board. So I'm super excited about the pick here. Keenan covers Texas basketball for Inside Texas, part of the On3 Network. Also does some great work for Mavs on SI and draft coverage over at SI as well. So he knows Tre Johnson's game as well as anybody here. So Keenan, thank you for coming on and talking a little Tre Johnson with us.
Dude, of course, man. I've been following Tre since he was a sophomore in high school in the Dallas area, so I know his game pretty well at this point. Yeah, and very excited that he ended up in an Eastern Conference team where I think he has a quicker chance to get a max.
Yeah, I think he's going to have an immediate pathway to some minutes here, and I'm expecting some big production here overall. So I guess just start nice and simple here. Do you like the pick overall for the Wizards? It seems like you do, but I want to hear, from you directly. Like, is Tre Johnson a steal for them at a set like the 6th pick? Doesn't seem like you should be able to get a steal, but like, did the Wizards work out pretty well for them here?
Yeah, I think it's a really good match for both parties actually, because like you said, the thing that I like about the Wizards right now is they have a lot of, I think, talented guys that can be role players. I think Koulibaly is already a very good defensive player. You have Sarr, you have Carrington, you have guys that you can build around. And Tre is the thing that they're kind of missing is maybe a dynamic movement shooter, a guy that can be a knockdown shooter, can create for himself. And that's what Tre Johnson is overall. He's just a really, really advanced shot maker, super talented offensive player. And several games this year that I saw in person and, that I covered watching on TV. I mean, he's maybe the best offensive player in this class overall, just because of his ability to hit contested shots and score in a myriad of ways. He really is just a guy that can he just puts the ball in the basket. You know what I mean? It's sometimes hoops are really complex and sometimes it's simple. And sometimes you just look at a guy and you go, yeah, this guy just gets the ball in the basket really, really well. And I love the pick for the Wizards. I think in a lot of drafts, Tre's a top 3 guy, and I had him 5 on my board, I believe. So I think 6 is a really good spot for him. I think it's a beautiful match for both parties, really.
You mentioned the shooting there. Obviously, that's a huge thing. It pops off the charts, when you just look at the stats. But I think some people maybe pigeonholed him as just a shooter leading up into this draft a little bit, and he's a great one. So if you get that at a minimum, that's an amazing place to start. The Wizards need some shooting, so I think he helps them there day one. But I just think there's a lot more there. I buy him as a playmaker for himself and others. I buy him putting the ball on the floor. I buy him as a passer. But you saw this more than I did here. Some of this to me came down to just role and offensive fit and system and roster construction around him. So I think just seeing him on like an open NBA court, I think there's so many more things we didn't really get to see this year at Texas that I think he'll be able to do. But you tell me if that's fair or not.
Yeah, definitely. I think he's what he's very good at doing is they double teamed him a lot this year, or they would blitz him. Mm-hmm. And he was very good at passing out of those situations. And his assist numbers don't pop off the page, but I think a lot of that is due to poor spacing and lack of finishing and being able to convert from his teammates. Like, he made made some very impressive skip passes. If you watch the Arkansas game, there's a few instances where he's, being swarmed and he makes a really good read and the other player just doesn't convert the shot. So I think if he were on a better team with better spacing, he would have had much higher assist numbers. And that's kind of what they talk about with his defense as far as being a weakness. I think a big reason why he wasn't an elite defender is that he expended so much energy on the offensive end every possession, trying to get open, trying to create a shot for himself, sometimes trying to create shots for others, that I think his defense can improve if he's given more help on the offensive end. He's not forcing all these shots, just trying to get to his spots every single time, because the Texas offense last year was kind of unimaginative, right? Like, they would run an action maybe a secondary action, but there's just not a lot after that. They'd maybe run a slip screen, they'd run some kind of pick and roll where the ball handler shoots the ball. It just wasn't a very complex offense. And I think if you give him an offense where he's coming off pin down screens, or he's able to use his movement shooting ability, I think he's going to be able to be, I don't think he's going to be an elite wing stopper really necessarily, but he's a guy that can at least compete on the defensive end of the floor because he's a very high motor guy and he's a high energy guy. And that high energy, that endurance really translates to a guy that has to run around and shoot the ball a lot,
I think he's a decent athlete. He's got good positional size. So can he guard ones and twos? Like I don't see any reason why he can't at least be a neutral presence on that end of the floor. And when a guy's doing what he does offensively, if he's just not getting hunted relentlessly, I think that's a win for you.
Yeah, no, for sure. I agree with that. And I think, again, too, like, he expended just so much energy just trying to get open, and just trying to create shots for other guys and himself. And I really think that he can be a guy that, at his peak is scoring 25 points per game, because the thing that really pops out too is, like, obviously the shot making is advanced, but the efficiency is there too, despite playing in a system that was not conducive to efficient shooting, right? He shot 40% from three on almost 7 attempts per game. Like, the guy was nails and he hit big shots in big moments. He's not afraid of the big moment. And that's kind of going away from real, on like real strict analysis, I guess, but he really has the mentality of a guy that can be the alpha on a young team and take the mantle as far as being the leading scorer, being the guy, the go-to guy in end of game situations and kind of a closer. And he showed a lot of that. And there's a really interesting sequence he had against UConn where it wasn't even a scoring sequence for him. It was, he basically cuts across, he gets the ball, Kaluma sets a screen for him. He goes to the other side, hits a crossover dribble, and he drives the basket and he kicks it out to Kaluma, who then kicks it to, I think, Julian Larry. Julian Larry misses the three, but Tre jumps up, he stays in the dunker spot, tips it out, and it results in an assist again, where Tre passes it to somebody and they score. So the high motor thing, I think, is very underrated for a guy like Tre. Like, he's just really, really energetic on the floor, and I think that will translate to the defensive end once he's given more tools to work with on offense.
You mentioned sort of the willingness to be an alpha there, right? Like, to be the guy on a team. And I don't know, Wizards fans listening to this are probably going to be sick of me mentioning this, but it really clicked for me seeing him in person this year in Dayton in the first four. It's the brightest lights, obviously, like, the first 4 games aren't as huge as some of the, air quotes, main NCAA tournament games, but it's a big deal. You got your team in the tournament. The situation's important. And just for Tre to be able to do what he did and just sort of take over, I thought was big. And he wasn't like his best game of the year or anything like that, but just the mindset was big. There was a situation where he wanted the ball late, multiple possessions in a row. And then, like, Tremont Mark took a really bad corner jumper early in the clock, and Tre was like, no, like, that comes back through me, and, like, kind of patted him on the head. And this is a multi-year, high productive college basketball player he's talking to like that. Yeah. I thought that says a lot about him. And Mark didn't take it the wrong way. So it clearly wasn't, this is my show, like, big timing you. It was just like hey, like, let me get you a better look than that. And I thought that was really cool to see.
Yeah, the leadership aspect is really real with Tre Johnson. Even at the beginning of the season, before he was the 20 points per game guy in the SEC, he was, other players were deferring to him in practice. He was a guy that was taking that leadership role seriously early on in his career at Texas. And I talked to, players and scouts and assistants, and they all said the same thing, that he's a guy that is willing to take that leadership role very seriously, very early on. And he's, if you watch, I'm sure you watch, you're the Wizards guy, the introductory press conference where they're like, what are your hobbies? He's like, I don't have any hobbies.
Yeah, basketball.
That's real, man. Like, and a quick story I always tell whenever I talk about Tre is when he was 15 years old, playing for Lake Highlands before he went to Link Academy. He was at Lake Highlands High School in Dallas. And they were playing against Richardson High School, whose backcourt was Cason Wallace, NBA champ, Cason Wallace, and Rylan Griffin, who played for Alabama and Kansas. Now he's going to Texas A&M. And they were the number 1 team in the state, I believe, maybe the number 1 public school in the country at the time, Richardson was. And Cason Wallace as you know, is an elite defensive player. Like that is his calling card. He is a lockdown on-ball guy. And Tre Johnson is a 15-year-old, and Cason's a senior, and Tre scored 39 points.
I love hearing stuff like that.
I mean, it was like his coming out party. And Calipari was at the game because he recruited Cason Wallace, and I think they offered him very quickly after that game. And smart for sure. And Tre has had the most successful freshman season for a Texas Longhorn since Kevin Durant. It's not arguable. And there have been some very good freshmen that have come through. You know what I mean? Like guys like Miles Turner, guys like Jared Allen. They've recruited very well 5-stars, even during the Shaka Smart era, which wasn't like as on-court success. They put a lot of dudes in the NBA. And Tre he was the reason they were competitive in the SEC at all last year. I mean, Arthur Kaluma had some moments here and there, but I mean, truly it was the Tre Johnson show. And, I watched him in person against Kentucky, and that was another game where he just really took over, and it was just kind of his show. And what I really like about Tre, like you kind of mentioned, he's a guy that doesn't get a ton of credit. He's not a lead guard, right? I don't see him as a lead guard at the next level. I see him as an off-ball guard, but he is a guy that when he gets the ball in his hands can create for himself and has opportunities to create for others. Again, if these guys would just had converted a few more shots, he might end up with 4 assists a game instead of 2.5,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it makes a big difference, right? Like these weren't elite shot makers next to him. Mm-hmm. Like no disrespect to Arthur Kaluma and Caden Shedrick and some of these guys. Like that's just not what you were relying on them to go out there to do. And I totally agree with you there. The defense. Let's go back to that for just a second here. Like for someone like him, if he is always going to be a high volume offensive guy, I mentioned just wanting him to be neutral and things like that. If you saw a way for him to be productive as an NBA defender, is he better on ball? Is he better off ball? Or just wasn't really great at either this year? I guess sort of break us down a little bit more on where he's at defensively. And if there are anywhere areas where he stands out, is he going to force a lot of turnovers? Like what's sort of his strong suits on the defensive end so far?
Well, I think his size lends itself to being a guy that can possibly guard the opposing wing as well, right? He's 6'6", 6'10" wingspan. Like, that's a big deal. He has a 6'10" wingspan. I think that's, I wouldn't say he's a guy that's going to create turnovers and kick the ball into transition much, but I think he was probably better off the ball than he was on the ball this year. But, I mean, again, like those long arms, it can lead to getting your hands into passing lanes. Errant passes can be picked off. And again, Tre's a good athlete. He's not a transcendent athlete, but he's very good. And, again, I've harped on it, but I really think we didn't see the best of his defense just because of the situation he was in with how much he had to do on the offensive end. I mean, he was the entire offense for that team last year. He took, I don't know how many shots per game, but I think he shot 42% from the field and something like that. And he was just constantly having to do something on the offensive end. I mean, he was getting rebounds. I think he averaged 3 rebounds per game,
by the way.
That's a lot. Yeah. That's a lot of energy expended. He's not going to
SEC.
Yeah, man. And you watch SEC basketball, it's a very physical conference. I mean, those guys are beating the crap out of each other constantly. It's just physical, bodies banging into each other. Very good athletes. I mean, you saw the first round of the draft, how many, or both rounds of the draft, how many guys ended up, going in the first 2 rounds and undrafted free agents and things like that. So when you're in a conference with the Auburns of the world, the Floridas of the world, the Alabamas, and the, even teams that weren't as competitive like South Carolina, they were a very physical basketball team. It's just, but I mean, Tre's going to get that in the NBA too. The NBA, especially, when the Wizards start making the playoffs, which not be this year, but, in the next 3 years, let's say, that's when it gets physical again. And I think having that experience in the SEC may even translate a couple of years later, just because he's used to being bodied and not getting easy looks, right? Like Tre had to take so many contested shots this year, so many bad looks, so many into the shot clock. Nobody's doing anything. He's the only guy moving on the offensive end. There's no off-ball action. And so he was responsible for so much on the offensive end. I just really think his defense can be serviceable, which is all you really need it to be if he's going to be the offensive player that he projects to be.
Can you see him competing for a starting spot, from day one, essentially?
I think it depends on what they do with CJ McCollum. Sure. I don't know what the deal. I don't know if they're going to keep him or move on from
At least
him.
for the first half of the year would be my guess.
Okay, yeah. So I think he's probably going to be maybe a sixth man, but I like that for him. And I also like the idea of him learning from CJ McCollum. I think that can be, because CJ was a guy that didn't really come into the league as a point guard, but developed more lead guard skills as he went along. And I think Tre's a guy that can do that as well. Again, I don't see him as a point guard or lead initiator really, but if he can be a connective passer, a guy that can be a secondary creator for the Wizards on top of being a 20, let's say rookie year, I imagine he probably averages something like 15 points. And that's a lot for a rookie. Sure. And I think, and on decent efficiency, I think that's a really successful rookie season if he's able to do that. And again, like I've said, I really like some of the pieces Washington has right now. I like the SAR pick last year. I thought that was a good selection where they got him even at 2 in a class where there was a lot of question marks. I thought he was one of the more sure answers. And I like Carrington a lot. I like Koulibaly a lot. So there's infrastructure there that maybe people weren't expecting there to be as much infrastructure just because the team wasn't successful in the last couple of seasons. But I really am glad he landed there as opposed to some of the other spots he could have landed. I think, and what I was saying on the board for the website I write for is that he has a pretty quick path to being a starter and being a guy that can maybe earn a max contract like fairly quickly.
I love that. If that is the case, that means he's worked out very well for the Wizards, which we would be happy to see here. I agree with you. I think just start him easy and just let him focus on a few things. And then, I agree. CJ is a good mentor because he just does a lot of kind of crafty stuff there that I think, Johnson's a bigger, better athlete. So if he can get the craft down too, that'll make him that much more dangerous. And if you average 15 points per game as a rookie, even on a really bad team, that puts you probably, pretty safely in rookie of the year, at least all, first team rookie contention here for sure. I don't love player comps, in like the most basic sense, but any sort of similar role player you can see him emulating here longer term.
Yeah, there's a few guys that I've heard and that I agree with. Old school comp that I had to go back and watch film on because I wasn't familiar was Allen Houston for the Knicks. I think that they had very similar freshman numbers, like eerily similar, very similar physical body type. I mean, Allen Houston was a little more built, but similar height. Similar role, just kind of a 3-level scorer that can handle the basketball, that can be, a leading scorer type of guy. As far as current guys, Tyler Hero is a guy I've heard that I think makes sense. I think he from the outside, he's kind of a Buddy Hield type. I think he's got some elements of Cam Thomas, although I think that Tre is going to be a more efficient scorer than Cam maybe was. I mean, with a few games here and there where he's not great, but that's going to happen for a rookie. You're going to have games where you don't shoot well. I mean, Caitlin Clark has had rough games, and she's one of the better players in the WNBA. So it's a thing where if Tre can get the open looks, he's going to hit some of the contested shots too. But if you can get him consistently open looks and build that confidence, situation where you could be really cooking with gas faster than you think. And so those are kind of the roles I think of when I think of Tre Johnson. And I've heard Ray Allen too, but I think it's hard to put those kind of expectations on a guy that early. But just an absolute dynamic shot maker and a guy that I've covered him for a while and just very genuine, very much who he is. He's not trying to front. When he says he doesn't have hobbies outside of basketball, I think he means it. I think he is a hoop head to the core, and he's just a guy that really, really wants to compete and really hates losing.
Hey, that's good. That'll fit in great for a team that's done a lot of losing. So hopefully that's the guy to help us turn it around. I like the Tyler Hero comp. He's got that kind of wiggle. Like he's obviously a Buddy Hield caliber shooter, but I don't think we see Buddy, create much or put the ball on the deck more. Whereas Hero, he's doing a lot offensively. Made an all-star team this year, I think in year 6, I want to say for him. He's like a 24-5-5 guy. Like if Tre can do that, I think we're cooking with gas at this point. Keenan, anything else Wizards fans should know about Tre Johnson here before we let you go?
Yeah, I mean, if you're a Wizards fan and you're looking for a reason to get excited, I told you this over DMs, but watch his game against Arkansas and Fayetteville. That is a really good example of all the ways he can score. He scores out of DHOs, he scores on contested shots, he attacks the basket, he splits double teams, he does pretty much everything you would want out of a superstar that can create for himself and score at a high clip, a high efficiency. I would watch that Arkansas game. It will fire you up about what he's capable of.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, that was a huge one at the moment. I was just sitting in my basement or my living room, just like, oh, he did that. Oh, yeah. He can do that too. Okay, that's great.
Man. It was really fun to watch. I wasn't there in person, but I was very excited, and I was like, yeah, this is an NBA level shot maker, no question.
That's awesome. If people want some more Texas coverage, hopefully you guys are sending some more, 5-star first-round picks our way in the next couple of years here. Where can people find your work?
Yeah, I'm at Keenan Womack on Twitter, and you can find me on Inside Texas of the On3 Network. You can find me on Mavs SI on SI Network, and then NBA Draft on SI Network. I'm just kind of writing for all of them all the time. I'm constantly putting stuff out. I do a show for On3, so I'm always working.
Keenan is a great follow on Twitter. Go check him out. Always just great stuff. I enjoy the general draft coverage as well, because I think you make me think about things I hadn't already thought about with guys. So I appreciate you putting just interesting stuff out into the ether there. And Keenan, thanks for coming on and doing this with us. And we're excited. We'll take good care of your guy here for you. And let's check in at some point down the road here, just with a retrospective of how this pick worked out for the Wizards.
Definitely, man. Really appreciate you having me on. And definitely take care of our guy. The Texas fan base and Texas graduates love the kid. So take care of him.
Will do. All right, everybody, you know the drill. If you're watching this on YouTube, please go click the like button for us, rate, review, subscribe, all that good stuff. And we will catch